Hello, everyone. My name is Lindsay Shuck. Thank you for joining today's Family Office Network's webinar series featuring SoulPhysio. Their mission is to combat mental and neurological illness in children by bridging the gap between Eastern and Western medicine. They have 2 clinics in Southern California focused on conducting research and creating cutting-edge treatment programs that use holistic interventions. At the end of today's presentation, we will have time for Q&A. Please use your questions chat option on your screen to send over any questions that you have so we can answer them accordingly. And with that said, Aneesh, I'm going to let you take it from here.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Lindsay. I'm stoked to be here and being able to share some of the different things that my company is doing to be able to push the envelope forward with healthcare and ultimately being able to help children. That's really the goal in the end of the day for me, and I'll be diving a lot deeper into that topic. But first, before we kind of jump into the meat and potatoes of today's presentation, I wanted to share a story with you guys of a young boy that was born and raised in the small town of Beaver Creek, Ohio. He actually dealt with pretty significant mental illness and addiction through most of his teenage years. And then the reason why I want to share this story with you guys is to help to paint the picture and think of what it actually could be like to live with mental illness. And I know for me, it's every time I hear this story, it always just reminds me of the realities of actually going through these experiences. And you know, this boy, he was born and raised into a wonderful family, and they had money, they traveled. All from the outside looking in, everything seemed to be, you know, just, you could say what it would be a picture perfect life for a child. But then what was happening on the outside is a little bit different than what was happening on the inside. Because for whatever reason, this boy had a very hard time being social at school and paying attention in class. You know, was getting in trouble on the playground, and parents were confused because they think that, you know, they were able to do everything they're possibly able to do to help their son to thrive. Because we think if the parents are successful, the siblings are successful, that means everybody should be successful, and that's not always the case. And you know, this boy's experience led to him discovering alcohol and marijuana in his teenage years and being able to use those as primary coping mechanisms for wanting to ultimately feel better. And as we know, that's not really a sustainable solution to any of our problems. And continuing to engage in those habits, by the age of 20, this boy was actually feeling suicidal and not wanting to live anymore. And that's just a result of the culmination of all these different experiences, self-medicating, and really not having much direction or education in life. And this experience really took a very strong toll on this boy, his whole entire family, because of the fact that they were so confused as to why what was happening was happening. And really, what the big turning point for this boy was in his story was when he got his brain scanned, and that experience showed him that it wasn't a problem with him for what he was doing, but rather a chemical imbalance in his brain that really led to him seeking alcohol and marijuana to self-medicate the way he was feeling, as well as, you know, several other diagnoses he's received over the course of his teenage years, ranging from bipolar to anxiety to depression to ADD and several others, which was really what led to be so confusing, was because we expect that Western medicine and doctors are able to shed light and show us direction. And you know, this boy went to a number of different facilities trying to figure out what exactly was going on with him. And, you know, like you said, getting his brain scan was really what put him on the path and kind of turned the lights on. And so with that being said, I want to transition into the next slide in the presentation, which is a little bit more information about myself. And also the next thing to say was that story, and that boy in that story is actually me. and describing a lot of what I've been through in my own personal life, which is what's led me to doing what I do today and helping children and their families being able to work through mental illness and neurological illness using natural methods. And a lot of the way that we do that is through cutting edge neuroscience techniques that can ultimately help to rewire the brain in a healthy way, in a natural way, with the minimal side effects, to help to bring children that are suffering with mental illness ultimately to a place of being able to function. And in my own personal story, after I, went through a lot of what I went through, which led to me going through 11 different rehab programs, working with a bunch of different professionals, really, really forcing me to dig deep and figure out why I was feeling the way I was feeling. And getting my brain scanned and making this my number one priority in my life was to want to heal from what I was struggling with and live a life of purpose, led to me getting my bachelor's degree in neuropsychology, as well as acquiring 11 different health and wellness certifications on topics ranging from nutrition, exercise, genetics, yoga, meditation, and various other topics that have helped to put together, not only what I do in my own life, but what we do for our clients present day. I'm currently pursuing my Master's of Science in Ayurvedic and Integrative Medicine from Maharishi University. And those of you that are not aware of what Ayurvedic medicine is, it's actually the ancient style of medicine they've been practicing in India for thousands of years. And very, very similar to acupuncture, and also based in using primarily herbs and diet to be able to treat illness. And we'll get to that more later on in the presentation. And really where kind of to wrap up my story and get into more of the company, is that after all these different experiences and me kind of working through what I went through, I decided to start my own clinic, the first clinic in 2019, focused on brain health. And then that I ended up purchasing an existing practice focused on Ayurvedic medicine shortly thereafter, last year. And then in response to COVID this year, I've decided to go nonprofit with my clinics and be able to pivot the direction of where we focus to being able to help children. And that's really where I then founded the SoulPhysio Foundation, where our mission at the SoulPhysio Foundation is to combat mental and neurological illness in children with a very heavy focus on autism. And once again, autism is a growing area of fascination for me, and also just modern day medicine and basically being a neurological mystery. So we'll get to more of why that's a focus here shortly. And so we also plan to conduct research and fund treatment for complex mental and neurological cases at both of our Southern California clinics. So part of what we're going to be doing is maintaining a treatment fund where we're always going to be evaluating, reaching out to our local community partners and taking children who cannot afford treatment, holistic treatments outside of being covered by insurance typically, and then also being able to fund those treatments and gather data so we can continue to gain an understanding of how our treatments are able to help these children. And then a lot of this data is going to be used to implement cutting edge wellness programs for inner city schools and families, because they typically do not have access, almost always do not have access to wellness education as part of their curriculum. Most children don't, but especially inner city, because of the fact that they lack the income and the resources to be able to gain that knowledge and understanding. And then ultimately our long-term vision is to open schools, clinics, and community centers all over the world, helping to make wellness education and wellness services available to those that need it most, with a very heavy emphasis on children's mental health. Our next slide comes to the Mindful Classroom, which is our project, our first major project, which we're engaging in and currently raising funds for. And what the Mindful Classroom is it's a movement focused on providing accessible wellness services to inner city schools and families. As mentioned, that's a huge part of our mission at the SoulPhysio Foundation, is being able to educate parents, faculty, and children about how to live a brain healthy lifestyle. And the program we've created for the Mindful Classroom are two proprietary 12-week programs, one for parents and one for faculty of schools. And the program consists of a system that we've created called the 4 pillars of a brain healthy lifestyle. And what these 4 pillars are is mindfulness, nutrition, movement, and community. And being able to educate parents and faculty about how they can incorporate these elements of a brain healthy lifestyle into their day-to-day lives and be able to train, and not just train, but teach these habits from that they're applying to their own life to the children that they serve. Because when we think about it, the children, the two populations they spend the majority of their time with are parents and faculty. And I think that a huge reason why I went through what I went through was the fact that I was just simply not taught. My parents were not taught. My teachers were not taught how to maintain a healthy lifestyle and truly what it means to have brain health be a part of their life. And that's why I'm making it the first order of business with my nonprofit to be able to put that education out there at a very affordable price point to those that can pay for it, and make it available to those for free to those that ultimately cannot afford it. And that's where, with some of the money we're looking to raise, that we're going to be constructing a proprietary learning platform with a mobile app that includes lessons, live classes, and programs, not only along health and wellness, but then other areas with other content creators to be able to supplement the information that we're providing to ultimately give students, parents, and faculty access to very important education that they're not currently provided with in today's educational system. And that's where a huge part of how we plan to grow the Mindful Classroom is by partnering with, starting with Southern California and inner city schools there, as well as other different schools that we have access to, with people that are currently providing similar services to these schools all around the United States, and being able to provide free access to the platform to the parents and to the faculty of the schools. And then being able to roll out a subscription on top of that that can be for those that wish and are able to pay for these services. And the curriculum is really going to be focused, as I mentioned, on the 4 pillars of a brain healthy lifestyle, and how tools such as nutrition, meditation, yoga, and exercise can be used to build a healthy brain. And the way that these 12-week programs are going to be formatted is that they're going to be delivered through engaging video-based modules that utilize artificial intelligence to be able to enliven the curriculum and send daily text message reminders to people's phones. There's going to be handouts, and then that way we really make it engaging, self-paced exercise. And so that is really where our first big project comes in, and that is the Mindful Classroom. Our second major project is titled Uncovering Autism. And this is where we are going to be able to dive deeper into why autism. The mission of the SoulPhysio Foundation and my personal mission is to combat mental and neurological illness in children. And then with autism, my big fascination with that was when I was on a business trip in Florida back in February, and my medical director, who actually lives out of Florida and practices out of Florida, introduced me to one of his colleagues that owns 2 autism schools down in Florida, strictly for kids on the spectrum. And I see how much extra attention that these children need. And when I was walking through these schools back in February, I could feel and sense that these children really need help, because autism is rising at a very high rate. That about 15 years ago, the statistics showed roughly 1 in every 150 children were diagnosed with autism. And now 15 years later, it's about 1 in 56 children are diagnosed with autism. And that is a very, very significant rate of diagnosis and rate of prevalence, I guess you could say. And that's really what led me to wanting to start the Uncovering Autism project and And really what that is a movement to further research how holistic interventions can impact quality of life for children on the spectrum. And we're going to really be focusing deeply on autistic children of minority status between the ages of 7 to 14, because of the fact that they are statistically proven to receive less funding and less services from the state, which is very much how the current autism treatment model is replicated. And that's where we want to make it a point to allocate some of the funds that we raise to conducting clinical trials at both of our clinics to begin to gather data on how Eastern and Western medicine can be used to improve quality of life for those on the spectrum. And we're planning to do 2 separate clinical trials. Second quarter of 2021 is when we're projected to begin those trials. And the second part of that process, and kind of a unique part that's typically not the process of any kind of clinical research, is that we were planning to film an autism awareness documentary through our in-house production company titled SoulPhysio Productions, which is another company that I own and operate. And that what our goal is with that is to be able to bring in experts from the field of autism and be able to showcase the family's journeys going through these clinical trials, to be able to not only bring awareness to what we're doing as an organization, but ultimately be able to get the documentary, picked up on a distributor such as Netflix or HBO or Amazon, somebody with very, very large worldwide distribution that can ultimately help to make this information available at a very large scale. And ultimately what we plan to do, and kind of the intersecting point between uncovering autism and the mindful classroom, is that we plan to develop virtual coaching programs for families of autistic children and be able to house this content on the mindful classroom, and being able to build out a whole entire area of the website that's specifically focused on autism education. Now, moving along, another project that I briefly alluded to is the fact that we're going to be funding complex medical cases for children who cannot afford it, and otherwise complex mental and neurological disorders. That way we could really deploy a full-scale holistic treatment plan, utilizing treatments at both of my clinics, as well as coaching for the parents, to ultimately gather data, but be able to get these children and get these families help that they wouldn't otherwise have access to. And I think this is really just a culmination of everything that's going to be happening at a clinical and virtual level with us, but being able to just extend our hand and be able to scholarship children and families that ultimately cannot afford it, being able to really, really bring in that philanthropic nonprofit element to our foundation. And now I don't want to touch too deeply on this, but just to show, one of the big projects we're working on that's more long-term is to build a sustainable community in India. Now, the focus of today's presentation is more on our domestic operations, but I want to show this as in, we're already taking steps to being able to expand overseas and ultimately be able to create opportunities for families overseas, but then also do higher levels of research and be able to create more in-depth, longer treatment plans and immersions for families and children. So if there's any other questions that people have about the Sustainable Community Project, feel free to send those to me privately after today's presentation. And once again, to piggyback and beyond the next 3 to 5 years, and really what my vision for the SoulPhysio Foundation is to, beyond just the financial goal to become a multi-billion-dollar social enterprise, but what's even more exciting about having that kind of multi-million-dollar benchmark for me at the age of 27, since I do have time on my side as I build this nonprofit, even beyond that is what comes synergistically is the level of impact that these billions of dollars can have. Because as we get from 1 million to 10 million to 100 million and beyond, the level of impact then rises synergistically with the amount of money that's being generated, through the nonprofit, from donors, corporations, family foundations, all of that, and being able to then allocate those funds to build schools, clinics, and community centers that really specialize in being able to provide free wellness services and free wellness education to their local communities, and being able to arm parents, faculty, and children on ways that they can live a brain healthy lifestyle in order to combat mental and neurological illness. And then another huge portion of how I plan to grow is to gather cross-cultural data across different populations, so that way we can gain an understanding of how our environments ultimately impact our well-being and our ability to be able to put together a lifestyle that, number one, enhances the positive traits of our environment, and then number two, be able to add in safeguards to minimize the negative effects of our individual environments. For example, climate is a huge one. Somebody living in Florida versus New York, somebody living in New York is going to be much more prone to getting depression in the winter because of the lack of sunlight. So that's just a very commonly well understood example that I want to help to paint that picture of gathering cross-cultural data on a global level. And once again, I think I've said this a few times, but making wellness services and education available to those who cannot afford it is the underlying theme and pattern, of course, with children across all that we're doing with the SoulPhysio Foundation. Now I want to transition from the projects that we're working on and kind of the what of the organization into more of the how and what we're actually doing at the clinics to be able to accomplish the goal of combating mental and neurological illness in children. Because it is a lofty goal that many people out there are struggling with, but I believe it's one that with the right people, the right methodology, and the right plan, that we can ultimately begin to chip away at this growing problem and ultimately begin to reverse some of the increased prevalence of mental illness in children. And using my own observations of the world as well as my own personal experience, I've designed the proprietary SoulPhysio method. And really what SoulPhysio itself means is that soul, we know that as kind of being our innermost part of our being that kind of represents purpose, change. Sometimes it's called the spirit. So that it's really learning to live from a place like the soul center, and hence SoulPhysio, living from the inside out. So from the soul through the physical versus the outside in, which is very much how we're used to living life in today's world. And that's where this methodology, as mentioned, combines cutting edge science from Western medicine along with the ancient traditions of Eastern medicine. And on the Western side, there's all different kinds of progressive advancements in technology, especially when it comes to the brain, because this is very much in the last 30 years been a very hot topic, as it should be, because it's the most complex organ in the body that's responsible for so many different functions, basically everything that happens inside of our body. And then so on the Western side, being able to take cutting edge imagery along with different healing modalities and equipment that can help to give the body the resources it needs to be able to build a healthier brain. But we're very much on the forefront of the Western side and being able to research some of these modalities, but then also bring in the ancient traditions from Eastern and Ayurvedic medicine and being able to understand how the combination of both can ultimately be used to heal the body at the deepest level, being able to prevent illness, and ultimately for those that don't have it, and then for those that do have it, be able to improve quality of life by incorporating natural methods that do not have to involve pharmaceuticals. And if pharmaceuticals already are involved, being able to incorporate tools like healthy eating, daily movement, journaling, and other different exercises that we use that have already been proven to work through research over decades. Like we know that we're supposed to eat healthy, but then there's so much misinformation about nutrition in the world today because everybody thinks that the paleo diet's going to work or the keto diet or Atkins. But the truth is that we all have different bodies that respond differently to different types of food. And that's where Ayurvedic medicine is able to assess one's individual body type. Hence, the third slide says here, and why we're able to put together a completely customized program based upon one's unique needs. And that's where, the ancient traditions of Ayurvedic medicine have been able to heal and help to improve quality of life for many people experiencing illness, because of the fact that they really take the time to understand at a deep level how the same two people are not unique, which is why, say you give a child Adderall for ADHD and it worked for Susie down the street who was diagnosed and, started taking Adderall, and then that eliminated her symptoms and she started getting better grades in school. The difference is that may not work for, Billy, who's my son, that was diagnosed with ADHD and is also, the other person's classmate that it did work for. The truth is that it's not just because the Zoloft has an antidepressant effect. Not the Zoloft, I meant Adderall. I use Adderall as the example. The fact that Adderall has not an antidepressant, but an effect on ADHD, got sidetracked thinking about depression for a second. No, Adderall being used for ADHD, and that affiliation is only going to be useful with very certain cases, and much deeper research and understanding into the child's symptomology, their family history, their genetics, like I mentioned, their individual body type and kind of how their organs function are all going to be very important resources and very important information to gather as parents, and being able to put together the right treatment plan to ultimately get to the root cause of illness and be able to help to find lasting results. And that's where the beauty of Ayurvedic medicine, along with the cutting edge advancements on the Western side, can really help to create the next generation in healthcare. And that's where we have a team of licensed healthcare professionals, both on the Western and Eastern side, to be able to be experts within their own fields and bring these different expertise together, and being able to then optimize and create the most efficient treatment plan for everybody that comes through both of our clinics. And as mentioned, our focus is largely on disease prevention by addressing the root cause of the illness. Now I mentioned that I started my first clinic in April of last year, which is called SoulPhysio Wellness, focused on brain health and cellular rejuvenation. This is really the representation of where we're at on the Western side. And this clinic really helps to embody that with the different equipment and treatments that we offer there. And the primary diagnostic tool that we use for children is a new type of imaging called QEEG brain mapping. And what's really cool about this in reference to being able to treat mental illness successfully is that it's a non-invasive test that uses EEG electrodes, and it's able to take a 3D picture of the brain showing areas of imbalances. And then these areas of imbalances are then placed up against a very large database of thousands, tens of thousands of scans that have been done over a course of decades to find where the abnormalities in brain pattern are. And because of the fact it is such a well-utilized tool, that it's actually covered by insurance. And we plan to gather a library of data on all the different children that come through our clinic to be able to pave the way for future research projects. And then in addition to the brain mapping, which is our primary tool to image the brain and gain a picture of where children are at baseline, and then following treatment, so that way we can gain an understanding of how certain treatments impact certain areas of the brain, is through functional medicine testing. And for those of you that may not be familiar with functional medicine testing, it's another new emerging area of Western medicine that really helps to address the root cause of illness using testing and supplementation. And the testing we plan to utilize are, of course, the traditional, but very in-depth and more comprehensive blood panel. We have a hormone test, neurotransmitter test, food insensitivity test. You know, these are just a few of the main ones, but then there's so many more tests that are available that can help to create a very comprehensive picture of what the child's body looks like at baseline and after treatment. That way we can then have a very clear picture of what is changing in response to certain protocols. So that way, as we evolve and as we continue to grow as an organization, we're able to adjust our methods and adjust our treatments based upon how children are responding, making it a constantly evolving methodology. And that's what I think is really beautiful about this, is that it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. And then once again, we take the results from the testing to create a customized treatment plan based upon findings. And now to move on to the second clinic is the SoulPhysio Ayurveda clinic. And as I mentioned, Ayurvedic medicine is what I'm currently pursuing my master's in right now. And I have a staff of licensed Ayurvedic practitioners that work at the clinic on site and virtually. And to speak a little bit more about what Ayurveda is, it's a sister science to acupuncture, and very similar in the sense that the primary two forms of treatment and medicine are herbs and diet. And being able to just incorporate the right herbs and diet for one's unique body type, which Ayurveda has an ancient system to be able to tell by looking at one's specific body type, what diet and what herbs are needed to help to cleanse their body of toxins. Because Ayurvedic medicine believes that inflammation and very heavy toxicity within the system built up over a long period of time is ultimately what leads to many illnesses, and why they focus on addressing imbalance at the root level to be able to prevent the manifestation of illness later on in life. And that's where many of the protocols that we employ and that Ayurvedic medicine begins with a very heavy detoxification period that could be up to 4 weeks, and then being able to come into a rejuvenation period, which helps to re-strengthen the body and re-strengthen the systems within the body that are ultimately affected by the built-up imbalances that lead to symptoms. And that's where we really plan to use a lot of the cutting-edge research and a lot of the cutting-edge data that we plan to generate on the Western side with some of the modalities mentioned on the previous slide, and being able to begin to quantify Ayurvedic medicine to help to bring it as more of a mainstream treatment in the United States, primarily for children with mental and neurological disorders. And here's now where we come to a screen of what my clinical team and key advisors. I don't need to go through everybody's individual background, but as you can see, it's a nice blend of where we have Dr. Zaid Ratanzi, who is my medical director, to Dr. Sri Ganesha, who has his own lab, who's going to be running all of our testing for us, down to Michael Lee, who is the primary lawyer for our nonprofit, as well as Dave Farrow, who runs our marketing side of our organization, and who is a current Guinness Book World Record holder for the greatest memory, and a very, very successful brain health guy himself. And so I've really taken the time to construct a team of experts, not just in the medical field, but on the business side too, that can really help to lead the SoulPhysio Foundation to being able to create changes for children that need it the most, while also creating a very sustainable business model that can help to bring us to that level of becoming a multi-billion-dollar social enterprise that I know I cannot single-handedly attain myself. And that's why being able to bring in those that are experts in their specific fields can help to enhance and be able to bring in areas that I cannot see myself, and ultimately be able to plug in some of the gaps within the organization that need work. And now some of the different statistics that help to share why this is a problem beyond my own personal story. And that, so 1 in 6 children between the ages of 6 and 17 have a diagnosable mental illness. 1 in 54 children are born with autism, And of those children born with autism, 30 to 60% are more likely to have ADHD, which is a term called comorbidities or coexisting disorders. And these first three statistics really illustrate, number one, how common mental illness is, and number two, how one mental illness is very often accompanied by another. And then that leads into the fourth statistics of that children with autism are 8 times more likely to suffer from digestive disorders. And the reason that I added this one in was to show the importance of nutrition and being able to help children with autism and being able to understand that nutrition does play a role in what autistic children experience. And now lastly, approximately 9.4% of children, just 6.1 million children between the ages of 2 and 17 have been diagnosed with ADHD. Once again, just painting the picture of how common mental illness is amongst our youth. And now into how can we make this all happen with our fundraising goals. Our first fundraising goal to carry out the Uncovering Autism and Mindful Classroom project, which I spoke in detail about earlier, we are looking to raise 1.5 million by the end of the year this year to begin to roll out those plans, begin to construct the online learning platform, create content for the online learning platform, conduct the clinical trials for the autism research, as well as filming the feature-length autism documentary. And this is ultimately going to be the money that we need to bring our initial projects into fruition, and then also be able to generate revenue at our clinics to be able to sustain our domestic operations and be able to branch out as we go. And that's what's really, really exciting about this process, is seeing the amount of impact that $1.5 million can have and the amount of children that we can really, really help with this amount of money. And so I appreciate everybody taking the time to look and watch the presentation today, and that we would love to have your support through this time. And as you can see that, the money will have a very large impact in being able to help to create the next generation of healthcare by bridging the gap between Eastern and Western medicine. And so now the longer term fundraising goals, to once again just paint the picture of that longer term vision we have, is to raise 25 million by the end of next year to begin construction of the sustainable community in India in 2022. And then long term is, of course, 100 million and beyond to bring into our long term goal of building schools, clinics, and community centers domestically and overseas to be able to diversify our message and ultimately create that local impact that we need within respective communities. And here now, for those people that are willing to donate, we do have, of course, the tax benefit that goes without being said. I mean, many philanthropists, those of you out there who donate already know that you do receive a tax benefit for donating. You get recognition on our website. And for those who donate 100,000 or more, we will be gifting you with an executive producer credit for our Uncovering Autism documentary, and also gaining recognition and a decorated award presentation at the annual SoulPhysio Foundation Gala, which will be held in Q4 of 2021. And for those that donate 250,000 or more, you get 2 VIP tickets to the red carpet premiere of Uncovering Autism documentary in Hollywood, which will likely be in about 3 years. And then you'll also get a founding donor plaque to be showcased in our SoulPhysio Wellness Clinic with whatever text you would like in commemoration to perhaps a family member that has had mental illness, or any other dedication that you would like to give to where this money can go. And this plaque will remain in the clinic for as long as needed and as long as the clinic is in existence, hence the founding donor plaque. And I thank you all for taking the time to listen to my presentation and being willing to support us on our journey to help to combat mental and neurological illness in the next generation, helping to create the next generation of leaders, one brain at a time.
Hi, Aneesh. Thank you so much for that lovely presentation. To our attendees, we would like to open it up to Q&A. So if you did have any questions, go ahead and use the questions chat option on your screen to send those on over so we can get them answered. Let's see, Aneesh, I kind of just want to jump right into it if that's okay with you. First question, what changes need to occur in the educational system to incorporate mental health education for children?
Yeah, no, so that's a great question, Lindsay, because I think there are many changes that need to be made within the education system to be able to bring into fruition a lot of what I talked about today as kind of being the long-term goal for where we want education to be. And I think that the biggest problem and shortcoming with the system today is that there is not a a very heavy emphasis on wellness education. Now we have physical education, we have health class, but just those two things barely begin to scratch the surface in the vast world of wellness and how wellness can make a huge difference and a huge impact on children's brain health. Because I think if we're not even teaching children about the brain and how our actions impact the brain, it's pretty hard to imagine there being a positive impact on these children's brain growing up. And I think that's where there's a huge rise in mental illness in children in the youth, is because of the lack of education for parents, faculty, and children at this day and age, especially with COVID and the virtual learning, which is a huge reason why we want to construct the mindful classroom, to be able to come in and be able to provide that education and be able to hand it to schools, because the schools are just not well funded, and that they are overly concerned, and their primary focus is really with being able to just keep the lights on almost and pay the regular wages and take care of the absolute mandatory of what needs to be done for these children's education. And so I think it's a very complicated endeavor, and a big reason why we plan to construct the mindful classroom, to be able to help to provide some of this education that's needed and fill in the gaps where we can.
Okay, great, fantastic. I like this question a lot. What makes the SoulPhysio method different than current treatment options out there?
Yeah, absolutely. So the SoulPhysio method, and what really makes us unique, as I kind of spoke, about the Western side and the Eastern side, is that the current Western model of allopathic medicine is extremely focused on treating symptoms. As we know, we go to the doctor, we say what symptoms we have, and the doctor gives us a diagnosis. The diagnosis is then oftentimes followed up with maybe some different lifestyle changes, but typically a prescription of some sort, or some type of trip to the pharmacy. And that's where the current allopathic model is. And this model is wonderful for acute conditions, meaning conditions that are arriving right now. So if you need treatment right now, or you need surgery, or you get in a car accident, that's where Western medicine can be extremely helpful. And in the example specifically of psychiatry, that we're diagnosing depression, anxiety, and these other mental illnesses without first looking at the brain, I think is a huge problem. And why why our method differs is because we make it a priority to want to incorporate testing, primarily a brain scan at baseline, to understand what the brain is doing, and then being able to put together different lifestyle changes with the brain, or that work to help to address those imbalances in the brain, by first looking and having an understanding and getting to the root cause, as opposed to just focusing on the symptoms. And that's where Ayurvedic medicine is what makes our symptom, or not our symptom, our methods unique, because they don't just deal with the symptoms, they work to get to the root cause, and being able to put together a sustainable plan that can help one to make the changes needed, to not have to continue to go to the doctor necessarily over and over again and get more medication, but rather get to the root cause of the illness and be able to actually heal. In some cases, not always, but even just improve quality of life and heal a lot of those underlying imbalances.
Okay, fantastic. Are there specific struggles that you have found that children have when they're trying to maintain a good mental health in school?
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's a great question because there's so many different struggles that children and families face, especially looking at now what we're going through during COVID. I mean, I think that there's a lot of different issues that people faced pre-COVID, and then post-COVID, there's a totally new level of struggles that people have faced. I mean, we can talk about kind of the in-person model and some of what these children face and what they struggle with when it comes to maintaining good mental health. Like a big thing that I shared is that, in answer to one of the previous questions, is the lack of education. Because if people aren't even aware that they have quote unquote mental health problems or symptoms of depression or anxiety, and it's just perceived as normal, you can't change a problem that you don't know exists. And that I think that, it's extremely important, first off, to create an understanding around what good mental health is and what good mental health isn't. And I think that that's just not being addressed right now in schools. And I think that it's very much based upon being popular. It's very much based upon getting acceptance from peers. Bullying is a big thing. All of these different factors, I think, are contributing to the rise in mental illness, because then if children aren't taught how to take care of their mental health, and then other factors are forcing them to not be happy with who they are as people, forcing them to want to, be in, say they want to look better. I mean, the struggles of a 17-year-old versus a 14-year-old are going to look a lot different, but ultimately with the lack of education, they're not really taught. And same thing with parents and faculty, where if they're not taught, like, what are the signs of, good mental health, or what are the signs of mental illness brewing, and how can children improve their mental health, it's really hard to expect children to know what to do themselves, because ultimately it's up to the parents and the faculty to set the example for the children, because they lead by example. And another big way that children act out, like when they're acting out, it's typically a cry for attention. So if children have like abrupt changes in behavior, or if they are exhibiting tendencies that are purposely harming others or causing trouble within the family environment or at school, it's typically a very, very strong cry for help, and something that should be handled with extreme care, because then it's an opportunity to be able to help that child and prevent the illness, or what could potentially be an illness, from forming later on. And then we look at, the present day with COVID and the virtual learning and social distancing, adding in a whole nother dimension, because not children, they thrive very much off being social. And one of the biggest components of maintaining good mental health for children is being able to hang out with their friends, play games, play sports, have
Right.
movement, but ultimately have a sense of community within their respective environment and their respective ecosystem. And that's one of the biggest things that's being taken away during COVID, which is why depression and suicide are through the roof. And so that's a big reason why I'm wanting to construct the online learning platform, is so we can help to once again address a lot of these shifts that are taking place with COVID.
Yeah, that's super helpful. And honestly, being a mom myself, I think that all makes a lot of sense. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Next question. What do you see as being the end goal for the SoulPhysio Foundation?
So the end goal for the SoulPhysio Foundation is, as I mentioned, beyond just our goal to become a multi-billion-dollar social enterprise at a global level. We really plan to allocate those funds and be on the forefront of bringing Ayurvedic medicine into the mainstream of the Western world. We talk about a huge opportunity here, from not only an impact standpoint, but from a business standpoint, and being able to break new grounds. Because I mean, we think about 10, 15 years ago, acupuncture was not really mainstream healthcare by any means. And now we have all different kinds of acupuncturists with their own practices all over the place. It's covered by insurance. It's a very heavy topic of research. People know what it is, that's the next step for Ayurvedic medicine, because of the fact that people have not yet taken the time to be able to actually quantify it. I'm sure people have thought about it. It's not an easy thing to do, but we're really going to be the first organization to be able to step into the mainstream and being able to quantify Ayurvedic medicine through a lot of the new technologies that are coming out, because all of those new medical technologies have just come out in the last 5 to 10 years. So being able to be the first ones to quantify Ayurveda, and then being able to create uh, helpful education services and treatment programs for children at a global level is really what our mission is. And then we want to have a global presence with brick and mortars and many of the major communities, not just domestically but overseas as well, that can then take the research we're doing at our Southern California clinics, the data we're gathering, and being able to make it available at a very close and intimate level through clinics and community centers. It's one thing to be able to just post an article on a blog, or write a research paper, because a lot of people can't understand that and don't understand that. So it's really our mission and our focus going forward to be able to not just create the next generation in healthcare and bring Ayurvedic medicine into the mainstream, but being able to really, really take that knowledge, that education, and being able to have a strong presence in our communities, and actually being able to shake hands with people and finding ways to teach it practically and in ways that will last and ultimately create an impact for those that choose to engage with us.
Okay, perfect. This seems to be the last question for now. What was the biggest turning point for your personal journey?
Absolutely. It's a great question, because I mean, my personal journey is really why I'm here doing what I'm doing. And the big thing is with that was when I got my brain scanned, as I mentioned, in 2013. It was at a place called the Amen Clinics. And Dr. Daniel Amen, he's a psychiatrist. He's been in the business since, I want to say, in the 90s. He has 8 clinics around the country. And he was really the one that pioneered bringing brain scans into mainstream Western medicine. And for me, when I got my brain scanned, up until that point, I thought there was something wrong with me as a person. That's why I was, having a hard time in school, hanging out with not so healthy people, smoking weed every day, drinking on the weekends, and ultimately not living productive life. I thought it was a problem with who I was. But then when I got my brain scanned, it showed me that, it's not a problem with who I was and who I am, but rather a problem in the way my brain's functioning, and that there's a strong chemical imbalance that I was able to address. And that, that turning the lights on and realizing that, there's so many children and people out there struggling with mental illness that are not being taught practical tools. There's a lot of people out there starting to, there's a lot of people talking about exercise. There's a lot of people talking about nutrition. There's a lot of people talking about meditation. There's a lot of people talking about mindfulness. And I see it can be confusing, because people are starting to recognize that mental health is important, but the topic of it and the amount of information on it is so vast that it becomes extremely overwhelming, and people usually psych themselves out before they start. And that's why, for me, I made it my mission through my own personal education to get my bachelor's in neuropsychology and complete all the different wellness certifications and graduate degree too. That way I can understand what bits and pieces from all of these different individual areas can come together as one proprietary methodology that takes the best of all the different worlds, and being able to ultimately help children so they don't have to go through what I went through. And that was really the biggest turning point, because I think then it showed the importance of the brain and how the brain can ultimately reshape itself in response to our behaviors, thoughts, feelings, emotions, and actions in either a positive or negative way. And that when we choose to engage in a positive way and choose to eat positive things, to exercise, and use building a healthy brain as our main intention, which is what I do today and what I've done ever since I got my brain scanned, is that then it gives us
a new motivation. And then now it's put me in a position at the age of 27 where I'm able to not only, do everything I'm doing, but be able to know the benefits of it going forward.
Fantastic. There were a few questions asking if we would be forwarding the link to rewatch, and yes, we can definitely do so. I will actually be following up with everyone individually, so if there are any additional questions, or if you would like to get in direct contact with Aneesh, I'd be more than happy to accommodate you in that way. Aneesh, is there anything else before we sign off for the day that you'd like to say at the end?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everybody for taking the time to come on, listening to me sharing about my story, what we're working on, and our vision. And once again, just a reminder, we are raising 1.5 million by the end of this year, and we would love your support on our mission to help children. So thank you guys.
Thank you so much. And to all of our attendees, thank you for joining us today. I hope you have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you all soon. Bye.
Thanks a lot.